The CONCACAF Nations League is here. The third year of this tournament is now in full effect after the USA won the first two iterations and is looking for a three-peat victory here with two matchups, Panama versus Mexico and USA versus Jamaica, happening in Dallas this upcoming weekend, which we will be in attendance for come final time.
Yes, sir.
That final matchup, man, I'm so interested to see. Will it be Panama-Jamaica? Will it be USA-Mexico? Will it be some other sort of iteration?
Yeah.
The Give and Go boys are going to Cowboy Stadium, man, AT&T Stadium, to catch ourselves a Nations League final. So to start off, we have a Gold Cup final rematch in the semifinals between Panama and Mexico. My beloved Mexican side is back in action after a very controversial victory over Honduras 2-0 in the quarterfinal matchup, whereas Panama defeated Costa Rica, I believe, 3-1 in very convincing fashion. This Panamanian side is flying high behind Thomas Christensen. Only one loss in their last 13 matches across all competitions. What a stat, what a team, what insane, momentum behind them. It is truly insane. That one loss coming at the feet of Mexico in that Gold Cup final. Santi Jimenez shout out. Mexico, on the other hand, led by Jimmy Lozano, is looking to pursue their first Nations League trophy, one that we've been chasing for a while now, at the hands of USA, who has beaten us every single time in the finals. So this is big in the sense of hopefully establishing some momentum here for this Mexican side going into the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and more importantly, the 2024 Copa America in just a few months, man. So ego and pride is on the line for these North American fans, and it starts off with Panama against Mexico.
Could I riff on Mexico for just a little bit?
A little riff session?
A little riff session. I haven't thought about Mexico in a long time, as from a national team perspective. So it was really interesting going back to it, looking at the lineups, seeing who Lozano called up, and also just looking at all the results that they got last year. And when I really look at it, all things considered, and there's a lot to consider, Mexico had a decent year last year. You know, they had a decent year.
Got silverware.
We got silverware. They won the Gold Cup, and that was the expectation, especially with the team they brought to win that edition of the Gold Cup. It ended up being a pretty tight game against a very good Panama side, but they did it. You know, they got what they set out to do. So very good from that perspective for Mexico. And before that, there was a whole coaching fiasco that had to be settled. Yeah. Who was going to succeed Tata Martino? Ended up being Diego Coca, and that was, you know, a nightmare that was quickly solved. And it's been Jimmy Lozano who has come to the forefront for Mexico on the touchline. And when I look at his performances over the course of last year, I think you can be pretty happy as a Mexico fan. He got the Gold Cup, but I think more so he's kind of settled everything down, man, because things got really desperate and really heated around that 2022 going into 2023 timeframe for Mexico, and rightly so, right? I mean, a downfall of an empire in CONCACAF, if you want to call it. The USA invaded overnight is what it honestly feels like. So I think there was a lot of emotion for Mexico. So I think it all makes sense. So the fact that Lozano comes in, settles everything down, fantastic. And not only that, I do think the players have a lot of respect for him. Like, I think they trust his process. They believe his tactics. I think that's that's rule number one when you bring in a new coach. Do the players like him? And I think they definitively do. So that's great. And then there was also some really good moments that I had not seen Mexico perform at in a long time in games against Ghana, Uzbekistan, and Germany as well, bro. And even that weird B team friendly against Colombia. There was some really bright moments. That playoff against Honduras, though.
Yeah. I think that's why it was so controversial, because it almost conflicted with the trajectory that we were on. This mini trajectory that we were on. It was starting to look a little positive. We faced off against one of the weakest teams in CONCACAF and struggle, man. We struggled badly and ultimately needed help from the refs to get through.
Yeah, and go to penalties beyond that. And, just squeak by a very out-of-form Honduras side who played great. Let's give them their credit. But that result really showed me that Mexico still have a lot to figure out. But they have a lot to figure out. Thing is, as I said, everything that happened before that, I think the foundation's there, right? This is a new era for Mexico where they are definitively the second best team in CONCACAF, right? There's no debate anymore, right? Yeah. And if you think there's a debate, then that immediately tells me you don't know what's going on in CONCACAF, right?
That's just shame on Canadians for what went down with their nation.
So
that's on them, bro. They could have been the second best.
That is so
They could have, but they didn't want it.
They didn't want it. Mexico will gladly take it. But I think the questions that Mexico have to really answer is, what identity do they want to set out? Because I think the question always was, who's going to be the coach? We figure that out. Who are our best players right now? I think you can say, players like Edson Alvarez. Julian Quiñones comes into the fray, and he's in insane form right now. Henry Martin has been in fantastic form as well with America. Santi Jimenez, honestly in great form for club, and he's been in great form for club for like 18 months now. So there's actual talent that Mexico can now utilize. I think the question is, what style of football does Mexico want to play? We already know who's going to be the core. It looks like Lozano's the guy for now. So Mexico have a really good opportunity to build off of last year, the good parts, and try to come up with some sort of identity, with some sort of plan to then build off of for the next 2 years going into the World Cup. And I think there's not even a better year than right now, bro, because you have this really intriguing Nations League final setup. And of course, you have the Copa America to figure this out. Come the end of Copa America, if there's any doubts about Lozano, he's got to go. But if we end up playing very well, we play with a lot of vigor, there's an identity to the way that we approach, even if we lose out in a relatively early stage, then I think you can have a lot of faith in Lozano. But I think that's the number one question. Who is Mexico, and how do we want to play?
I've had a theory on this, and I want you to kind of walk me through it, okay? Just hear me out, and let's experience this idea. Who would you say is our best player? Best player for Mexico right now, just... If we put numbers to it on FIFA, who would be the highest rated player that we have right now? Who do you think it is?
My mind immediately goes to Alvarez.
Edson Alvarez, right?
Yeah.
I would agree. Our best player right now, it's Edson Alvarez playing in the toughest league in the world for a really good team in West Ham. Yeah. So my idea is then, why not shape our team's identity around the club that he's at, West Ham, where you can actually have a somewhat similar approach. Edson in that defensive midfield position, slinging balls out, to really electric wingers, which we have in Chucky Lozano, and occasionally you have guys like Uriel Antuna, Chino Huerta, who could potentially step up. Mikel Antonio, that could be Santi Jimenez in this situation. Exactly. At the back, we have some really reliable defenders in Cesar Montes, Johan Vazquez, Julian Araujo, Jesus Gallardo, and then either Ochoa, Malagon. I think that's there. But then who's paired up alongside him in that midfield at West Ham? You have a creative, or at least a more offensive threat, good at taking free kicks, James Ward-Prowse. Who's also really good at taking free kicks? Luis Chavez. You're seeing the similarities here?
Absolutely.
I think there's something to be said about almost copying or mimicking what Edson does at West Ham, but doing it with the national team. The only thing is, I feel like we already kind of have that, and it's just a lesser version of, and we end up seeing ourselves go up against really weak teams like Honduras and struggle. But I think the idea is there of having a really reliable killer striker in Santi Jimenez, who I think slowly needs to have more and more pressure to actually start delivering for the national team, because outside that Gold Cup goal that he scored in the final, he hasn't really done it. But he does deserve to get the minutes. That's why I'm so against the idea of Raul Jimenez, who didn't get called up, or Henry Martin getting minutes anymore, because this is our future. This is our future striker. He has to start getting minutes now, even if he does disappoint. I think it's important for him to go through those phases in the national team. Beyond that, I need our wingers to step it up, man.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest factors. Our wingers have been so mediocre as of late.
And that point, that Mexico's wingers have been pretty ineffective as of late, is why I would like to see Lozano try something different from a formational perspective. The 4-3-3, while it is the way most modern teams play, it is traditional now, if you will. I just don't think it works for Mexico, man. I really don't. I'm actually pro Santi now. I used to be pretty anti him from a Mexico national team perspective. Thing is, I still think there are better players in his position for Mexico. But the fact that he just continually goes off in the Dutch league, you got to play him. He's too young. He is the future for Mexico in that center forward position. That means you just have to give him the keys, even if it doesn't work.
Exactly.
I'm completely with you now. He has to play, bro. He has to start every single game. And if he truly fails, then we know Santi was never it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you got to give him those chances.
Yeah.
You got to start him in the Copa America. You have to put the pressure on him to show up. Otherwise, every time he comes off the bench, he's not going to have that pressure to really perform. So yeah, I say start Santi Jimenez for sure. But since the wingers have been so ineffective, man, I think we should play a second forward. alongside Santi.
Quiñones?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
Low key, even Martin, because he's just been in great form for America for the last 2 seasons.
Open to it.
And he's pretty mobile. You know, he could be a secondary striker to the main of Santi Jimenez. I would love that, actually. I think it would put less pressure on isolation moments for Lozano and Antuna, because when they get the ball, the shape is completely different. You could have Santi Jimenez going to Lozano and Quiñones peeling away, looking for a secondary option of a cross. All of a sudden, I think the opponent's defense would be like, oh shit, okay, we have Lozano, we have Quiñones on the backside of me, and then I have Santi Jimenez trying to cut right in front of me. I think all of a sudden, it creates a lot more chaos, a lot more danger. And that's my problem with Mexico all of last year, and honestly for the last 2 years. There's no true threat anymore. But I think it's because the reality of the situation is Mexico's talent is lesser now. It just is. I don't trust Antuna or Chucky Lozano to take on a South American or European defender one-on-one. I don't trust it anymore. So why not overload the situation, play 2 strikers who are way more informed? Quiñones, Martinez, Santi Jimenez are way more informed than our wingers.
What 4 do you play behind them?
Yeah, so what I would do is I would say Santi, Quiñones up top. I would still keep the width of Lozano and Antuna, but I would have them track back a lot more, right? Relieve a little bit of the pressure offensively, and even promote the idea of cutting inside a little bit more often, because right now it's just all wing, right? So I would promote them to come inside, combine with the 2 center forwards who are in ridiculous form. This is where it gets interesting, is you have just 2 midfielders, right? So the defensive responsibility increases big time. That's why I trust Edson, though.
Right.
He's elite in this position.
Who would you pair him with?
Yeah.
Because I don't think Chavez would fulfill that role.
I don't think Chavez would. I would say a really informed Eric Sanchez, who's going off with Pachuca right now. And honestly, if he's not cutting it, then you're a little screwed.
Well, I think this is where criticism of mine stepped in when I saw the squad that Lozano picked. Once again, he leaves out a player that I've been really hoping for to get minutes in the national team, Marcel Ruiz.
Yeah.
I think he could actually be in this formation, I think he'd be good alongside Alvarez in the sense that he has a lot of height to him. He's a physical player, but he's also creative. He can be somewhat offensive, and he can push himself forward to that final third. I think he'd be a little bit better in that role versus Luis Chavez, who is just more offensively oriented in that sense, but didn't get the call up whatsoever. And that kind of hurt me a little bit, man, because I've been following his narrative for a while, and he's still not getting the attention that I think he deserves after still having a really positive season at Toluca at 23 years old.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because with this formation, I want to take the responsibility off of Mexico's midfield. Because, I mean, when was the last time we said Mexico's midfield's good? It's been so long, man.
Oh, man. Back when Guardado,
exactly.
Herrera was at his peak.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
When you had a prime Gio dos Santos, man.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years since we really applauded Mexico's midfield. So why not take that pressure off of them? You make Edson Alvarez more into his role, purely defensive. Right now, in a midfield 3, he's asked to do everything. Box to box, defend big situations, and then go forward and somehow be a generator of chances. I don't like that. Put it on the guys that are in form, the forwards. Mexico honestly have a lot of talent right now. I just don't think the coaches as of late have really been setting them up for ultimate success.
And that's the thing here, because I do think Lozano is ultimately going to go for a 4-3-3.
I know.
So the way that the best case scenario of how he sets his team up in this 4-3-3 situation would be Chucky on the left, Santi in the middle, Quiñones on the right, Chavez, Alvarez, and Sanchez in the midfield, then Gallardo, Vasquez, Montes, and then either Araujo or Jorge Sanchez. You take your pick.
Yeah.
With probably Malagón, because he's starting that Honduras matchup. That's what I think is the best of what we have here.
Agreed.
And I hope that that's what we see in this Panama matchup. But I agree. I don't think we've had a coach that's really been risky enough to try new formations, man. We're very traditional in that sense because it worked for us so well for the past 15 years. I think the idea of switching that up it'll take a very innovative coach to actually commit to that, and we just don't have that ultimately, man.
Yeah, and another thing I'm worried about from Lozano's perspective is he really going to play Quiñones, right? I mean, he just got the citizenship for Mexico and didn't really get minutes in his first appearances. Maybe he's just slowly integrating him into the side, but I just don't see a version of Mexico where he doesn't start if you want to be successful, man. So start him now. It's the same. It's basically the same idea with Santi Jimenez. Just start him, because I think Mexico can be successful if their best players are playing. If Quiñones and Santi or either of them are on the bench, that's not Mexico's best version. So you just got to start playing him now, even if there's some growing pains. fuck it. Just play them. They will figure it out. They're very good players.
As we speak of a team with a lot of questions to be answered, we have a team that has been so consistent and so reliable in the sense of having a formation, having a system, having chemistry that has proven to be successful for them and has put them in a really good situation going into the semifinal matchup. That team is Panama, man. Panama is looking great behind Thomas Christensen with guys like Diaz, Fajardo, Carrasquilla, Mikel Murillo, Bárcenas, Andrade, Mosquera at back. This Panama team has an identity. This Panama team has a system, and this Panama team is honestly looking like the clear third best team in CONCACAF. The hope that people have for Jamaica just has not panned out and ultimately has fallen down completely. It's Panama that has risen instead and has been playing incredible football behind Thomas Christensen.
Yep, and I love this Panama side, man. I really do, because if Mexico has 5-6 questions left to be answered, Panama, I think, only have one.
It's one big one, though. It's one big one, though. Let's acknowledge that, bro. It's big.
It's big. For me, it's how high can they really go? That's my question. I think they have a fully realized team. Every single player completely understands Christensen's tactics, and they execute it pretty well. When you talk about the consistency, I think that is the epitome of a team that fully knows themselves. 1 loss in 13 is ridiculously good. And considering the only loss was in a very tight final against Mexico, I think you can call that a very good success. And beyond that, I have not seen a team in Central America be as good, as consistent as Panama since 2013-14 Costa Rica. And we saw what they were able to achieve. So for me, for Panama, it's how high can they go? Because I think they don't have any other questions. They know their roles. They know who's good. They know how to play in Christensen's system. So again, my question is, can they beat Mexico? Can they fight against the USA in very tense silverware fighting moments? And I think this is going to be a great year for Panama to really understand what this team is made of.
I actually agree with that question. I agree. It's not the question that I have, but it's on the same path because CONCACAF is a federation, a region that loves tradition. It loves its tradition. It loves its history. It loves keeping things the same way that they've always been. That's why this idea of the United States rising to the heights that they have has clashed with so many people, including myself, because we're so used to, one certain thing being true. Canada, we thought was going to be that, ended up not panning out, and now they're in the fucking dirt, bro. So, it's a cruel region, man. It's cruel out here. And so for me, when it comes to that idea, I think no matter how bad Mexico is, I do think they're a sort of litmus test for these CONCACAF teams that are on the rise. No matter what the form of Mexico is, I think the first obstacle to overcome is, can you beat Mexico, specifically Mexico, in a knockout setting in any CONCACAF competition?
Yeah.
Canada was able to do it in the World Cup qualifying, and I thought that was big for them. That was really huge for just the confidence it gave them, beating the best team up until that point in CONCACAF history.
Yeah.
For Panama to reach that height that we're hoping they can reach, especially going into the Copa America, they have to get past the Mexico test, man, because even though we weren't feeling our best, we were still able to win a Gold Cup final against them, where they were clearly the best competition for us in that tournament, and they still fell short, man.
Yep.
And I think they have to overcome that. I know that in this game, Mexico will essentially be playing in a home match, playing in the USA. It's a second home for Mexico, and it might not be fair to Panama. That's a whole other discussion to be had, that all these competitions happen in the U.S.
So true.
It's definitely a conversation to be had. But at some point, you have to overcome it if you want to be an elite team in CONCACAF and be able to say that you're on a trajectory of something truly special. Costa Rica even did it at one point, man. So that's the next test for them. That's what I need to see from Panama. The fact that they lost that Gold Cup final keeps me just a little bit at bay. They have another chance here, a semifinal appearance in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal, to be able to prove that to me and to so many other people that are eyeing this Panama team but just aren't fully convinced yet.
Yeah.
Because the numbers are good, but I need to see them pull off an incredible result here with a victory over the mighty Mexico.
Yeah, and what you just said is why I have Mexico winning this match.
That's why I have them winning too.
It's second against third. I'm going second place against them. Like I need to see it before I start fully thinking Panama is better than Mexico or can fight against the USA. I need to see it. But it hasn't happened.
But it's why, if Panama does win, I don't think our attitude will be, oh my God, Canada, where did this come from?
Right.
I think it'll be more of, okay, they're ahead of schedule and they got there, and congratulations. I'll be happy if Panama wins, honestly. Like, beyond my Mexico bias, like, for Panama to pull this off, I think would be huge and one of the best. It would remind me of what they did in 2018 when they qualified for the World Cup. Like, this would be a massive moment for the country in their footballing history.
This would be so massive, man, to knock out Mexico, trying to get in the final against what will probably be the USA.
Oh.
CONCACAF needs that matchup to happen. So Panama are not only against Mexico, they're against all narratives that CONCACAF wants to happen, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's going to be very tough for them, man. But my goodness, if they pull this off, bro, like this team might be better than prime Costa Rica to an extent. To an extent.
I don't know, man.
Not even
I'm gonna hold off on that.
Not even that Costa Rica could make a Gold Cup final.
That's crazy.
They had
crazy.
They had an insane 18-month peak, but that was about it. I think if Panama can win here and then take this form to the Copa America, they might have technically a longer tenure at the Central American top, and they would be basically tied for second best team in CONCACAF. That's very hard to do, and I agree. The narratives here are so against that happening. But man, if there is a team right now, it's got to be Panama, man. That's why I am so hyped for this match. I just need to see what happens. Here's the only thing that sucks. Michael Murillo injured, won't be playing. And I think that's actually a huge miss because the amount of chances he generates from that right wing back position is immense. When he doubles up on that side with believe it's Ismael or Jose Luis Rodriguez, it's a really deadly combination. You still have that combination on the other side with, I believe, Ismael Diaz and Edgar Bárcenas. So that's going to be good. The midfields are all there. The front line's there. The center backs are there. But yeah, you're going to be missing a really big piece in that right back for Panama. And that sucks.
Yeah, no, but I still think it's going to be a very competitive, entertaining match at the AT&T Stadium, and I just can't wait to see what happens, man, because these two teams are going for that Nations League trophy. Neither one of them has one, and they'll have a chance here to be in a final against probably the USA on Sunday, where the Give and Go boys will be in attendance to see who ends up competing for the Nations League trophy. But yes, I'm going to go Mexico on this one, but just by an edge. The next game up is United States facing off against Jamaica. Jamaica, a team that is coached by Hal Grimson with guys like Mikel Antonio, Bobby De Cordova-Reed, and Andre Blake. Star attacker Damari Gray is in the squad, but is suspended for the semifinal tie. And Leon Bailey was not selected due to disciplinary reasons. So they'll be missing some key players, which will end up impacting them because the one thing that Jamaica does not have is depth, right? They have a great starting 11 when everyone's healthy, but even then, even at their best, the chemistry just fully isn't there to a point where we're truly impressed with what they've been able to do on the football pitch. We saw in the Gold Cup semifinal where they faced off against Mexico, and we thought that they would be a much more competitive team, but ended up getting trashed 3-0. That's the context for Jamaica going into this matchup. And the United States, having defeated Trinidad and Tobago in the quarterfinals, but through a really messy result that saw Serginho Dest storm off the pitch at one point, get angry, and saw Trinidad and Tobago actually win their game when they hosted the United States, just losing on aggregate. So these two teams are really interesting. United States coached by Greg Berhalter with guys like Balogun, Pulisic, Johnny Cardoso going to Real Betis. How does he perform in this team? Weston McKennie, Gio Reyna, Yunus Musa, Chris Richards, Joe Scally. This USA squad is clearly the best team in CONCACAF, and they'll be seeking their third Nations League trophy, starting with a victory here over Jamaica.
The USA have zero questions left to be answered. I think for them, it's simply about execution. That's it. Who's in the best form? How do we employ Berhalter's tactics to its fullest? And then from there, let's build that chemistry. We're hosting the Copa America. We're hosting the World Cup. We have a string of Nations League finals wins. Let's get another one. I just think the USA are the kings of CONCACAF, and there's only one way that this result ends, bro, and it's in USA victory. I mean, again, just from top to bottom, pound for pound, the USA is so good, so talented. It's what I've been harping on for the last year and a half. Nothing's changed. The only thing that has changed is Pulisic's in the best form of his life. Right now, going off. for AC Milan right now.
God bless.
Balogun's been a little bit interesting, but you have a little resurgence of Ricardo Pepi, Haji Wright for Coventry City, getting the call up here. On the other side, you have Timothy Weah. Gio Reyna's been a little interesting. He's one of those questions of, will he be in form when he gets called up to these big tournaments? Because when he's on it, man, he's one of the best dribble penetrators in all of CONCACAF and low-key in all of the Americas. So there's that. The only question the USA have is just who's in form. Because whoever is, you start them, and there's a good chance they're going to beat pretty much any team in CONCACAF. Not even a good chance, a really good chance, bro. So Jamaica have an impossible task here. And I mean, the analysis is simple for me. The USA is going to win.
I have two questions. So maybe you can help me out here as you are an avid USMNT fan here. I would love to know these two things. So first off, going off of what you mentioned about the form of these players and who ultimately lines up, that's my question is, who starts for the USA? What do you see their 11 being? Because a year ago, it was very defined, I feel like. But if you look at their past 3 matches, because they've been against weaker opponents, they started different lineups. And then you go back to the Gold Cup. That was a B team, essentially, that played. Yep. We don't really get to see the best starting 11 often for this USA squad. True. And so my question is, who do you think is going to be the starting 11 for this USA team? Or do they still kind of hold back, given that Jamaica is a little bit of a weaker opponent?
I think Berhalter has to start his strongest 11, like the strongest 11 against Jamaica. You build that team's momentum going into the final. So I would definitely play Turner at back. I just think that makes sense. He's playing in the Premier League, not playing, but he's on the bench. He's seen minutes. He's practicing every day in the world's best league. You put Dest, Anthony Robinson. That's no difference there. Chris Richards, I think, will get the start. He's been playing for Crystal Palace pretty much all season long. He's been very good there, and he's been creeping around the USA squad to get that starting position, and I think he's finally going to definitively get it. Now, alongside him, that's kind of where the question is. I think you have to play Tim Ream simply because he's been that guy for the USA over the last 12 to 14, 18 months. He's been the veteran center back. It's been a recent inclusion of him, but since he's still playing in the Prem, since he's still captaining the side, I think you play Tim Ream even at 36 years of age. I think that's fine considering the youth around him. And then up top, and then in the midfield, you got to play Musa, who's been very good and a very integral part of AC Milan. You play Weston McKennie, who's been popping off this year and for the last couple of years in Serie A with Juventus specifically this year. Third midfielder gets interesting, right? Because Adams has been injured. He's been injured, hasn't really seen the pitch a lot. This is where I'd be okay with, honestly, Berhalter playing anybody there. Maybe he does play Cardoso. I wouldn't mind that at all, considering his trajectory going from Internacional, getting the clubs there, and then making a really nice move over the winter to Real Betis, and immediately getting integrated into that squad. So I don't really care who the third midfielder is, simply because Adams has been injured. So I'll be curious. Honestly, I don't know who's going to start in that position. I'll be curious to see who he does play. And then up top, I think you have Pulisic, you have Timothy Weah. Striker is going to be interesting, though, simply because Balogun has kind of been...
He's been off, bro.
He's been off,
Let's be honest.
Yeah, he has. But he's still scoring a fair amount of goals. Maybe not a decent amount like you would consider him doing last year. You might still play him, though, because he still plays for Monaco, and Monaco are in third place right now, top 3 side in Ligue 1. Whereas you compare him to, Pepi and Haji Wright, who are playing in lesser leagues for sure. I think it's the smarter move to play Balogun. It's almost like a Santi Jimenez effect. He's very young. He can still score. He plays with a very good team, and he actually plays. So I think you do start Balogun in that position. But I wouldn't mind seeing other people in that position, and maybe you take off Balogun early in the second half and try another striker there.
I'd start Balogun, and if not, then I'd put Pepi in. He just scored a game winner for PSV too. I think that's another good option. But regardless, my second question then to follow that is, there's an element of the Greg Berhalter factor here. If we're being honest, the way I've seen him perceived in the media, man, a lot of people don't like him. And I know you feel differently about that, and I know that's well documented, but in the grand scheme of the U.S. Men's Federation, I wonder what the factor would be of, what if the USA ends up falling short in this tournament, this mini tournament here, the Nations League, and doesn't lift it, when they clearly have the best squad in all of CONCACAF? They somehow find a way to lose to Mexico in the final. They lose to on fire, on form Panama side in the final, perhaps, or God forbid they get beaten here by Jamaica, right?
It's possible.
Is there an element of the seat getting hotter for Berhalter going into the Copa America which then could end up being a disappointing run. Let's just say that happens. And boom, within 4 months from now, Berhalter's out. Is that something is that like something that could happen? Is that something that's realistic here? If USA doesn't deliver, does Berhalter's seat get hotter?
I don't think so. I think the USA executives specifically really like Greg. I think they really like him, actually. And I think the players do like him too. I mean, I don't think they definitely like Greg. They like his tactics. He's very offensive minded, which is great when you have the offensive talent that the USA has at their disposal. So I think Berhalter's seat is completely cool right now. I don't think it can get hot. The only way I think it will is if the USA don't get out of the group stage at the Copa America. That's the only way. If we lose against a really tough team in that next round, we're fine. But if we lose really poorly against a weak team in the round of 16, then maybe it gets hot. But yeah, if we get out on the group stage, that's when I'd start to get a little worried for Berhalter. But even a defeat here, I think he's fine. I really do.
I don't know, man. I'm not as sold on that idea. I agree. The higher ups do like him.
They like him.
That
though.
is true.
There's no question there's no question because he came back.
Yeah,
he came back when we could have gotten pretty much anybody, man. It might have taken a while for us to get the coach, but we ended up going with Greg. There's a reason for that.
But I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think it's a good thing that they have so much confidence in him to the point where he can fail at the Nations League, fail at the Copa America, and he still keep his job. Because I think there is a peak that the USA can reach, and I've held firm on this. I don't think Berhalter's the guy to get them to that peak. He does get them close, but I don't think the full potential of this USA squad. I think it's being held back just a little bit by Berhalter's tactics.
Yeah, and I actually kind of agree, to be completely honest. I was very critical of some of his decisions at the World Cup that I think a wiser manager would not have made. Thing is, it's 2 years to the World Cup, man. And I think it would take a lot for the USA, who's hosting the majority of the matches, to be like, start panicking and look elsewhere. Whereas Greg knows the team. He probably knows like everybody's wives at this point, bro.
So many family dinners and everything, man.
Bro. I just think the USA, it would take a lot for the USA at this moment in time to be like, all right, Greg, you're not our guy. Now, Mexico, on the other hand, I think it's different. I think it's very different, which is what I'm saying. Like, Copa America, that's actually going to be crucial for Lozano because if it doesn't work out then, it hasn't been working out in the past. So like, okay, well, let's just change the manager. There's no problem there. But it has been working for the USA. Our players are getting older, smarter, stronger, faster, better. Berhalter knows everybody so well, and he plays a pretty good style of football. So why not trust him? I think the mentality of the USA uppers.
Okay, let's wait and see then, man, because I think that's a really interesting factor attached to this U.S. men's national team and the trajectory that they're on. But regardless, I have the USA beating Jamaica. I have Mexico beating Panama, meaning that we will get a Mexico-USA final at AT&T Stadium. CONCACAF Nations League, third time in a row. Let's see what happens.